Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Craig Resnick. I'm with the ARC Advisory Group. First of all, I want to thank you all for traveling many of you, such great distances to come to a forum, another ARC forum. I think when you get to the Andy session in the first thing in the morning, you'll notice that I think we broke all attendance records. And I think you're also going to find that what really surged this year is a number of manufacturers, processors, OEMs, that are coming here to really learn about digital transformation and learn about the latest technologies. And one of the companies that they're certainly very interested in hearing about is inductive automation. I think this is what, your sixth time here? Now at ARC, every year we write a study on human-machine interface software. And the good news is that every year you come, your market share continues to increase. And I think you're up to the point where you're the second largest independent HMI software company in market share. So the good news is that you're doing a great job being a platinum sponsor at our forum, and hopefully that's helping with the market share as well. But anyways, two things you're going to hear a lot about in Dawn's presentation, and when we're moving over to Travis as well. And one, you're going to hear the number 8. Unfortunately, the Patriots have only won 6 Super Bowls, so it's no connotation to the Patriots. But maybe in a couple of years we can that'll match. And the second thing is I do think you're going to have a completely new perspective on inductive automation after this presentation. So keep the word perspective in mind, and it's my pleasure to introduce Chief Strategy Officer of Inductive Automation, Dawn Pearson.
Mike, I think I'm okay with this. Thanks, Craig. I knew that platinum sponsorship was working, so that's good to know, Craig. I'm glad you threw that in there. So good morning, everyone. We appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts with you this morning. I know everyone had to get up pretty early, so thanks. Hope the pancakes are okay. I wasn't sure if it was a new perspective or the pancakes. Looking at a few tables, I guess it was the pancakes. So thanks for getting up. My name is Dawn Pearson with Inductive Automation, but Carl Gold and Travis Cox are joining me this morning, and we really appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts with you about what we've been up to, where things are going, and it is true that we're just kind of a little bit excited about it, so we're happy to have the opportunity to share it with you this morning. Actually, if we do look back at the ARC Forum to comment on that, it certainly has been a big deal to us over the years to notice how often the themes of the ARC Forum and the things that we were working on with inductive automation lined up, over those years. I mean, when we launched our module showcase, when we put Cirrus-Link Solutions MQTT modules along with Ingnition, when we had our Ignition Edge come out a couple years ago, and then when we got forward and launched our onboard program, we did those all at the press conferences in this room next door, or this part of this room here, every year. So it's an important conference for us to kind of kick off the year. And even the release statement for this year, integrating OT and IT, increasing industrial connectivity while decreasing risk, and rolling out the right mix of technologies at the right time, the whole theme of digital transformation. These are ideas that are actually pretty relevant to us at Inductive Automation. Also, as a company, we, since the beginning, have really been OT-IT centric. Database centric, OT-IT convergence were big deals with us. We continuously prioritize security, and I think we certainly make an effort to be both thoughtful and intentional with our release of new technologies, and really try and have them products out in the marketplace when the products are really needed and when they're actually going to be utilized by those customers. In fact, I just want to throw this up here because our CEO, Steve Heckman, when he founded the company, had 20 years as an integrator at the time and really had an idea of what the pain points were and what he really wanted to do when he launched the idea of what came to be known as the Ignition platform. And the goal really was to create industrial software that empowers our customers to swiftly turn great ideas into reality by removing all technological and economic obstacles. He had a pretty good sense, I think, from the customers he had worked with, that if he really did give those industrial professionals those tools that they needed they would get out there and innovate, and they would do some amazing things with the technology if you put it in their hands. And that's what popped out with Ignition. It really was the first truly universal industrial application platform for your HMI, SCADA, MES, IoT, and other needs that you have with your industrial organizations. And the response over those years has been pretty amazing. Just a snapshot here, our solutions are being used in over 100 countries right now. We have like 1,900 plus integrators on our program. We've grown to 48% of Fortune 100. Now I think it's about 30% of Fortune 500 that are using Ignition in some form within their organizations, and that footprint is beginning to grow. So I just want to give you a snapshot before I turn it over to Carl as to 7 reasons why, if you will, Ignition happens to be, really right for those enterprise deployments that so many industrial organizations are looking at now. First one is really it improves operational efficiency. You can connect businesses to ERP, you can connect to real-time operational data, you can easily make dashboards, key performance indicators. You get more insight into really integrating that operational and that machine data, if you will, for predictive maintenance and prescriptive maintenance and artificial intelligence, all the solutions that are going on with big data now. This one I have to mention because it certainly has been something that, in fact, in the early days, I remember going to an ISA conference, I think it was 2006 or 2007. Ignition wasn't even out as a platform yet. And Steve was with us, we're all at this conference, and people kept coming up and telling Steve, there's no way you can sell this stuff this cheap. You're going out of business. You're not even going to be around in 2 years, not going to make it. Well, that's, more than 13 years ago, we just started the company and we're still here. And so we think that you as organizations responded pretty well. When you give people unlimited tags, unlimited clients, it's amazing what you do inside your organizations to create better solutions. So really getting the whole organization connected for kind of a fraction of what it might cost with other deployment possibilities is another one. Then there's scalability, unlimited scalability. Really, it's, I don't care if you're using just a server or two inside an organization under one facility or you've got servers spread all over a large geography. It's easy to scale Ignition to just fit the needs that you have as an organization. And you can have multiple sites, synchronize projects, monitor site performance from one central location. This has really helped build out the deployments in the enterprise level. It really makes large-scale data collection really reliable and easy. So IoT solutions combining MQTT data transferring efficiency with powerful data acquisition and development tools. And you can easily push data really to thousands of plant floors and field devices. You can get it to the central organization when you need it and apply it and connect to business applications. No matter what industry you're in, security is becoming more and more important. You can't afford to lose control of that data. It's a continuous theme here at ARC. I think that Ignition's really focused a long time. You'll hear more about that from Carl today, to do top to bottom enterprise level security technology so you can have control over that data, access to that data, and a certain comfort level there too. And on the topic of OT IT convergence, we kind of grew up that way. We were database centric based on IT standard technologies 15 years ago. That was the beginning. When Steve started, he said he had a simple goal. Could I just get PLC data into standard SQL database and be able to do something with it? It's all I want to do. It'll do wonders for my customers if I could do that. IT was doing stuff that OT wasn't doing. It was time to think differently and bring them together. Well, OT IT convergence wasn't even a theme on any analyst, chalkboard anywhere, if you will, but it really has grown to be really important. You can't lock technology down into proprietary systems and keep it from people using it. It's there to be used. So I think open, interoperable, standards-based, secure systems is the direction that we need to go. And we need as an organization to be part of that ecosystem. It's not us alone, it's us in collaboration with the great products and services and devices and solutions that are brought together by this entire industry. Our job is to be a player in that industry and to help facilitate that kind of growth. But IT standard protocols, SQL databases and OPC and REST web services. These are all things that need to be part of the Ingnition platform's interfaces and capabilities. Arlen Nipper made the first comment. I usually don't give him credit. I usually just steal what he says and put it into slides somewhere. But today I'm going to acknowledge you, Arlen. We were chatting one day and he was talking after meeting with some customer that was trying to doing all this coding on top of operating system. He says, we have got to get the point that we need to be building tools on top of platforms, not coding on top of operating systems. The stuff has to be usable, transferable, and interoperable with the other folks that are playing in the industry if your organization is going to succeed. So Ingnition as a platform, its modules are the tools. Ingnition's modular structure allows your team to build customized solutions. They'll fit your specific needs, but all basic common functions are in the platform and the specialized features are in the modules. You'll hear talk today about platform, but you're also going to hear about a new module. The beautiful thing is it comes into an already established, stable platform to add functionality so you can keep in touch with the future and where technology is going. You don't create yourself into a corner technologically. Modular architectures let you adapt as technology changes. And also, if you're buying modules, you don't need to buy a module if you don't need it. But if you happen to need it later on, great. Buy it when you need it. So it really allows you to have sort of just-in-time technology. Those are 7 major reasons for Ingnition's success. A major one, though, beyond all that is our customers. We have a real important ear to the ground with those customers. The community that we're involved in is very important to us. And they're also a #1 source when we're trying to find out what's going on, what do you need, what are the trends, what are the demands in the industry. It's that customer feedback and interaction. And so we have seen from those customers 3 major areas of concern that just keep coming up over the last few years. They're very prominent now. That's the ability to grow and expand your architectures across the enterprise, the need for enhanced security, mentioned earlier, and a growing need for first-class mobile solution for industrial automation systems. And as you can see, these requests are also very in line with the topics at ARC this year. So there are major areas of improvement that we've made for the release of Ingnition, which is coming up right now, and that is, and I'm very happy that we're going to have a chance to talk to you about this morning, that's Ingnition 8. It really is the biggest release of Ingnition that we've had since 2010 when we released the product. I mean, bar none, this is the biggest. The latest version is going to bring you more power, more security, more mobile-ready technology than we ever had before. And I don't think there's anybody better to share that with you than the person very much the spearhead behind all of these initiatives, and that is our co-director of software engineering, Carl Gould. So to give you a little bit more of a look into that, please help me welcome Carl.
Morning, everybody. All right, let's see here. So when we started looking at what we wanted to do for 8, one of the things we always do is we try to develop really practical, pragmatic solutions for real-world problems in ways that are immediately usable by our users and our customers. And so to do that, we really rely on our customers, like Don said, to give us the feedback about what's important to them. And as we develop, we're always balancing these sort of 2 opposing forces. And that is what's new and what's familiar. So what's new is driven by emerging new technologies. And these technologies can be real trendy, and it's pretty easy to sometimes get caught up in the hype on them. And that can result in chasing buzzwords. And in our industry, that sort of buzzword-driven development really doesn't help anybody. There's too much on the line to sort of get off track and follow any kind of big buzzword. And on the flip side of what's new, we have what's familiar. So what's familiar is what works, what's always worked, tried and true solutions that you're comfortable with. And you've grown to trust them over years of use. And that's fine, except that if you stick with what's familiar for too long, that can have drawbacks as well. In technology, you can't really stand still, especially in software, right? The pace of software changes and computing technology changes means that if you stick with what's familiar for too long, you're really just moving backwards. Software companies that don't keep pace with changing technology will pretty soon find themselves as a legacy solution. That's why you don't really hear about vintage software. It'd make my job easier if it were the case. And so we really find that the best innovations for software really come at this sort of narrow intersection between what's new and what's familiar. So these are those kinds of practical innovations that leverage new, modern, standard, and tested technologies and use them to solve real-world problems that people are facing in the field. And so the only way to do that is to really listen to people and listen to customers. And so that's what we do. We have been listening to our customers, and we really feel like we found the sweet spot. And so we're very excited to present Ignition 8. This is definitely our most ambitious release to date, and the most powerful version of Ignition we've ever released. We're very excited about it. It's full of some really important features that our customers have been asking for a while. So if you'll indulge me on a little sort of historical tour here, I want to talk a little bit about how we got to Ignition 8. So 9 years ago in 2010, we released Ignition 7, and Ignition 8 really represents sort of a new beginning for us. In a lot of really important ways, it lays a technological groundwork for a bunch of new innovations to come. So we're excited that it's finally here. So over the past 9 years, we've released roughly a major update to Ignition every year. And each of these releases represents sort of a cycle of innovation, right? So each of these releases addresses some particular market need, adds some feature, improves performance in some way. And if I step back and look at this graph and really let it sink in, it's really kind of amazing what this sort of steady incremental progress has meant for us. Comparing where we were as a company 9 years ago to where we are today is a pretty different picture. So it would be pretty easy for us to just stick with what's familiar and just keep doing this forever. But like I said, technology doesn't let us do that. We don't really exist in a vacuum. Technology changes, customers' needs change. And for us, technology is one factor, but the customers really are perhaps even a more volatile factor. Because as Ignition is a set of tools, a platform for building applications, one of the interesting things about it is that when we add something into the platform, add a new capability, we don't really know exactly where customers are going to bring it, what they're going to do with it. And so one of the most powerful forces for us is just the reality of what our customers do. And they're always pushing Ignition into new areas in ways that we can't necessarily anticipate. So we build features for people, but we don't know exactly where they're going to go. So we're always playing this delicate balance of trying to build the right thing and look into the future. So a few concrete examples. So in Ignition 7.4, a long time ago, we added UDTs to our tag system. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what a UDT is, but it's like a little reusable tag model that you use to build up a bigger tag model. So if you can model a machine with dozens of tags in it, and then easily create multiple instances of that. And that way, if you need to retroactively go and maybe add an alarm to a definition of a tag inside of this model for a machine, you can do that, and your change gets applied across an entire tag model. So it's a way to create reusable tag models. Anybody who's a user of Ignition here probably takes this feature for granted. You probably don't even remember a time when we didn't have this. But the story I'm trying to tell here is about how we added the feature of UDTs on top of a tag system that already existed. And now every single one of our customers uses this feature every day. And it turns out that when you make something easier to do, people end up doing a lot more of it. And so these days, we regularly see customers pushing the tag model inside of Ignition past that million tag point. And that's exciting. It's exciting for us to see, people love our unlimited licensing. They build huge systems with it, and that's really cool. But it also presents some more practical challenges for people like me. And so what happens here is that due to the way we built the tag model of Ignition 7, when you use UDTs in this way and you have these gigantic tag models, if you needed to go back and make a change to a UDT and then that change had to be applied across this really big tag model, it would take some time to apply the change. It had to go and basically reload all of these models, and it got a little bit sluggish at scale. Okay, so it works. It's just a little slow. Again, it would be pretty easy for us to just stick with what's familiar, keep going. But as we took a step back and tried to plan for the future and tried to sort of see what are the big changes we want to make for Ignition 8, this was a clear example of an area where we thought we could do better. So for Ignition 8, we've totally revamped the entire tag engine inside of Ignition, and we've made it really optimized for the way that people build modern tag systems at scale. So UDT-based tag designs are no longer a memory penalty. They're now a memory advantage at Ignition 8. They use about half as much memory as they did before. And perhaps more importantly, changes to those tag models are now applied in a really fine-grained way. So if you make a change to an alarm inside of a UDT that's going to go and affect 100,000 tags, it applies those changes to the running tag model without having to reload everything, which means that changes are applied dramatically faster. So this is a screenshot of us doing some system tracing. We've got memory usage and CPU usage in a real-world system with about 500,000 tags, a single operation mutating the tag model in a way that would have to reload about 50,000 tags. And it works. It gets through it. It finishes. But it's, anybody who's ever looked at a CPU graph knows that this is a little rough looking. This is the same graph of that exact same operation in Ignition 8. Barely a perceivable blip. So it's faster. Yeah, it's a lot faster. So all these types of changes to the tag model are now just many multiples of times faster, which is a big deal for anybody building a big system. And more importantly, not just building a big system, but maintaining a big system once it's in production, which is really how people use Ignition, right? And for most of our customers, an Ignition project is never finished. It's always under continued development and evolution. So that's an example of how we've made a core part of the Ignition platform better in 8. There's a lot of these types of examples, which I won't go into such detail in all of them. But while we're in there, while you're rebuilding a tag engine, you might as well make it better in a whole bunch of interesting ways. So we did a bunch of feature requests that people have been asking for tag models forever. It's much more extensible because we've seen the power of extensibility in the tag system because third parties use the extensibility of the tag system to expand Ignition's capabilities in all sorts of interesting ways. And there's all kinds of fun other things that I can get into in detail if people are interested. Okay, so another similar example. Back around the same time frame of Ignition 7, we introduced templates, right? Reusable little visual interface pieces. And then people wanted to be able to use these reusable templates in more than one project. So we then introduced this concept called the global project for Ignition, which lets you define a few things in this space and let you reuse them in multiple areas. And then we added the gateway network into the platform, which lets you communicate between Ignition gateways so you can start building a more complex architectural deployment. And then we added the enterprise administration module, which lets you sort of send resources around between these gateways. So we've added all these pieces for these sorts of enterprise deployment architectures over the years. And what we found is that these sorts of architectures have exposed a bit of a fundamental weakness in the way that Ignition organizes its whole project model, which is a pretty fundamental piece to the Ignition platform. the global project idea didn't really scale well with the global network, and so we had some pieces kind of fighting each other, which will happen when you build a system and improve it over 9 years. I'm going to skip a few slides so we can get to the more interesting things. Okay, so in Ignition 8, we've totally redone the project inheritance system. The project system, and we've added this concept called project inheritance. So when you make a project in Ignition, you can have that project inherit resources from any other project. And that project could inherit resources from some other project. And what this means is that now our customers are in complete control of how they can compose together all of these pieces in Ignition and have them build upon other bodies of work. And so what that's really practical for using is for things like those reusable templates, which is like a faceplate or some piece of UI that you want to reuse multiple times, a component, widget, whatever you want to call it. Maybe you have a site with multiple projects and you want to define some templates that get reused amongst multiple projects. Okay. Now time goes on and somebody at corporate says, hey, all of our sites should really be sharing the same set of templates across every site in the world so that we have some consistency, so each site doesn't feel like they're building things from scratch. So they can do that at the corporate level, right? They can define a project full of corporate standard templates at the corporate level, synchronize that project down to their site, and then at the site you can compose together your project full of site-specific templates to inherit from the corporate standards, and then your projects to inherit from all of those. And so the end result here is that you're able to compose together this interesting dependence chain between projects so that you can put together projects in a bunch of interesting ways. And perhaps most importantly, at the project level, you can then opt to individually override and customize all of these inherited resources. So you have both reusability and customization at the low level where there's always exceptions. It's like, oh yeah, all my sites are the same except for that one has this different motor or whatever. So that's a big win for the project model. Another thing we did in the project system, for many of our customers, this is probably the most important change in 8. One of the biggest feature requests we've been getting from our customers over the past few years is how can they integrate Ignition with a source control system. If you've ever heard of GitHub, that's the most popular source control system out there. This is a picture of me being asked that question on stage. I don't look too happy about it, as you can see. So this sort of became, people have been asking for this for so long, it kind of became a joke. But it's not a joke anymore. So the problem with us integrating source control into Ignition was that it was going to require a ton of work on our part and a bunch of really difficult changes to the core of the platform, which is a difficult thing to do. But Ignition 8 sort of gave us the breathing space to make those sorts of big radical changes to the platform. So it was never the right time before, but now is the right time. So we're very excited that Ignition 8 is fully compatible with source control systems. And this really opens up a set of very important abilities to sort of advance teams, because source control systems also play with a bunch of other state-of-the-art systems for not just managing changes, but also managing deployment and automated testing. And in our world, there's a concept called continuous integration testing. And there's sort of this whole body of work of state-of-the-art in software engineering that is leaking to other types of professions. And many of our customers are using those sorts of techniques. So they're very excited to be able to use source control with Ignition. Give you a quick example of how that might be used. So back to our template library example, imagine the corporate standard templates are developed at corporate headquarters and then pushed into a source control repository. So not only does the source control repository give you, the exact change history of every time the template was changed and by whom, but it also helps with deployment. So your individual sites can have access to that remote repository of templates, pull them down, integrate them into the live running system seamlessly. So it gives us a really interesting access to an existing set of tools. And so we love doing this. We love positioning Ignition in such a way that it can naturally work with existing state-of-the-art tools, right? We're not the kind of software company who feels like that we should develop everything in-house and we could do everything better than the rest of the world. Like, source control systems are really good, and we just want our customers to be able to use them because they're incredibly useful. Okay, so tag system, project inheritance, source control, these are examples of the kinds of big changes we made for Ignition 8. And for a lot of our customers, for a single site installation, these changes might not be all that apparent. And that's actually on purpose because it's all backwards compatible. You should be able to upgrade to 8. And if you're not excited by any of those things, you got a small tag system, you don't use source control system, that's fine, things will keep working. But as your use of Ignition becomes more sophisticated and you are moving into that sort of enterprise deployment, these types of features become incredibly important. And so this really represents a big step forward for us, and we're pretty excited about it. Okay, but what is an application building platform really for? It's for building some applications, and what's been happening in the application space since we first released Ignition 9 years ago. You don't really need your ear to the ground to have noticed this. Right, so this is a chart, basically more or less since we started as a company, of smartphone adoption. So this is kind of the big technology story of the last 15 years, of course. Smartphones overtook desktops and laptops as the most dominant computing device in the world 3 years ago. So obviously it's not news that mobile computing is a big thing, kind of a big deal. And we did adapt, right? We released the mobile module years ago. The mobile module was a module that let us bridge our desktop application technology into the web. But the mobile module, anytime you do that, anytime you take some kind of technology that was built in one era and bridge it off into a completely different technology landscape, you end up with a compromise. And the mobile module was a compromise. So we've known for years that some sort of first-rate replacement for tackling the problem of building first-class mobile applications was coming. So every year we asked ourselves, what would an industrial application framework that was built from the ground up to enable you to fully leverage modern web technology look like? So we're pretty excited to have an answer to that question, and that is our new module, Ignition Perspective. We've been building this module for the last 3 years, and it's obviously, first-class mobile application development has been a bit of a elephant in the room for us for a while, so we're really excited to be showing this to you guys. So let's take a little bit of a look at what it is. It's really a module that gives you a rapid design environment to build industrial web-based applications that are going to run natively anywhere. We really optimized it for speed, and speed means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Data is delivered to a running Perspective application over a communication channel that's always open, which means there's absolutely no polling involved. So tag changes arrive at your application via a push, which means they happen essentially instantaneously. But also deployment speed is really important to us. So as you're making changes in the designer, they're deployed out to your running applications the moment you hit save, and they're seamlessly integrated with the running application. Also, for a web-based application, it's got to be able to run everywhere. So the modern web browser is really the most universal application runtime we've ever seen, right? Essentially, nobody builds a piece of hardware with a screen these days that can't run a web browsing engine. So that means that Perspective will run anywhere a browser runs. So your phone, your tablet, laptop, TV, anywhere. And we also spent a lot of time making sure that Perspective had a really clean, fresh, modern look. So we have some themes for Perspective that are baked in so that if you're not a professional graphics designer, you can just get a clean look right out of the box. You can also develop custom themes for Perspective. So if you feel like you need to make an application fit some sort of corporate identity or something like that, you can develop your own theme for Perspective as well. And this product is really an absolutely pure web product. So that means there's no plugins, you don't need Java, you just need a web browser, which you already have. And it's compatible with any modern web browser. So Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Edge, anything like that. But it's also an app. So there are native apps for iPhone and Android for Perspective. And what that lets us do is really leverage the full potential of the device capabilities, because modern smartphones have an amazing array of sensors built into them. And that type of sensor information really opens up a number of really interesting application possibilities that I think are going to be really useful, especially in the industrial space. So whether you're using the camera to scan a barcode or attach a photo to a maintenance ticket, or you're using the GPS chip inside of your phone to make your application location aware, or we've got customers who are interested in using the accelerometer data inside of their phone for vibration analysis. We've got customers who want to use Bluetooth low energy beacons to give their buildings contextual awareness so that as you walk through them, your application knows what room you're in. They're the types of applications that you can build when you have access to all this fascinating sensor information is really exciting. So that's why we have a native app, in order to gain access to all that stuff. And I want to just really make the point that this isn't just a web dashboarding system, although you can certainly make very nice web dashboards in Perspective. These web sessions have full bidirectional control so that you can interact with your process, control things, start batches, set recipes, etc. Which brings us into security, right? So the security posture for Perspective is incredibly important, because with the reach of mobility means that your surface area for attack is all that much larger. So Perspective's entire architecture was built with security in mind from the ground up. So the perhaps most obvious and easily explainable part of that security model is how Perspective integrates with modern federated identity infrastructure. If you don't know what that means, that's a lot of big words. You've probably used it already. So anytime you go to a website and the website says, hey, log in with your Google account, and you're not on a Google website, that's federated identity, right? So the idea is that Google is you're federating the identity portion of your experience with that website to Google. They're acting like your authentication piece. So Ingnition and Perspective are now fully compatible with federated identity solutions. And we have found that most customers are in the process of moving to this sort of authentication infrastructure right now. So whether you're using Ping or Duo or Okta or Microsoft, we'll work with all those. And what that really gives you is single sign-on. So that if you are signed into your corporate identity stuff already, you'll just walk right into the Perspective application with that same session. And it lets us support two-factor authentication. There's also a whole new permissions model in Perspective that lets you really easily give fine-grained permissions control to who can view this screen, who can press this button, that kind of stuff. And you can look as pretty as you like, but if you're not able to do really capable things, it's kind of useless. So we've really spent a lot of time in Perspective building out the capability set. So one of the things people like about Ingnition right now is that they feel like they're just able to build any kind of application with it. It's incredibly flexible. So we've added a bunch of really familiar components into Perspective, the things you would expect. buttons, tables, charts, etc. And then we've also paired them up with a sort of a new breed of more mobile, capable components, things that take advantage of multi-touch gestures, swipeable carousels, maps, etc. And we also took everything that, all the sort of flexible UI building paradigms that we've been working on for the past 15 years and sort of reimagined some of them so that they're even more powerful. So people loved our data binding system, so we kept it, but we made it better with this new concept called transforms. People liked our property model, so we kept it, but we made it better by making it a hierarchy by using JSON. People liked our UI system. We kept it, but we made it more web-focused by making it composable with a bunch of different layout strategies that let you build responsive UIs. Because one of the major challenges when you move toward a web-first product is building an application that correctly responds to being on a phone in landscape mode or portrait mode or on a laptop or displayed on a TV. That's really the big UI challenge here. So I guess the point there is that, you know, we really, even though the technology was different, right? So now we're using HTML5 and CSS3, fully web-enabled product. We really wanted to keep everything that was familiar about developing an application in Ignition. So we have a familiar drag and drop design experience right next to everything else in Ignition, familiar component set, familiar property binding system, familiar Python-based scripting system that our customers love so much. So we really wanted to retain sort of the soul of what makes developing in Ignition fun and bring it to this new world of web-enabled applications. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Travis here. He's going to show you what this thing looks like.
So I get the fun job of always doing live demos. But that'll be all right. So you got to see a little bit of perspective in action there in some of the videos. But I thought it'd be a good opportunity to show you an already completed project in perspective, but then show you how it's built. Give you a sense of how you go from scratch to get it all completed and just to see some of the features that we're talking about. So we do have an online demo that is available at demo.inductiveautomation.com. So I'm going to go there right now, and it's going to load up a demo project already built with perspective in that same drag and drop designer. This entire project was built to be mobile responsive, so it will look really good on desktops, tablets, and phones. It's a single project that will adapt to the resolution that's at. So a way to show that here in Chrome is to go to my developer tool so I can switch it from a desktop to a phone. So here's what the desktop looks like. You can see the menu over there. You see quite a bit of information in the header. And if I go to a phone size, you can see that there's less information in that header, right? The menu went away, but now there's a hamburger icon to bring that in so that we can go to various parts of the project. And the components on that screen oriented in a different way. So they're vertical here rather than being spread apart on the screen. So every part of this application was built to be like that. So as an example, we go to HMI. Typically, in a large display, we'll see a PNID. So you saw this application on those videos. That is, of course, completely read and write. So we can control write back to the PLC. And this, on a desktop, you want to see the entire process. But on a phone, you don't want it to scrunch. You don't want it to be very, very small. So the idea is that we can adapt, and we can make that, on a smaller display, something completely different. And so here, it's a vertical display of that HMI, still the same kind of pop-ups that are there. And going down dashboards, all of that can display really nicely on the phone. And with that, of course, we can go to other parts of the application. So let's say we go over to our history, and we're looking at table data. So on a phone, if I'm looking at historical data, going back the last couple of days, getting averages for every hour, you don't want to see a table. Because if you see a table, the columns get quite scrunched. And it's really hard to see everything and get that full context. So here on a phone, we would see a card layout. So cards that are going to be going down the page, and we've got quite a few of them here. But if I was to take this same page and look at it on a desktop, of course, we're going to see a table. A table that is paginated, allows me to go to multiple pages, look at all the information. And of course, I have columns there that I can then do sorting and all the fun things that we would do on a desktop environment. So the idea is that you don't want to go and build two separate projects, one for your desktop, one for your mobile device. You want one project that in one set of bindings, one set of components that are going to respond and look really good on those two displays. So every part of this project is done that way. So here, there's just an example of an actual chart that all of this is touch responsive as well. So we can, if you had a touch screen, you can certainly zoom into various areas of that, zoom out, all built to be that way. Going over here to our alarming, just kind of show a dashboard here of the alarms and some alarm history. Go to the status to see the current alarms that are active. There's a lot of different things that can be brought into the Perspective application. Reporting, you can create forms for database management so that we can enter information into the system and see information from databases, turning whiteboards, clipboards into an application that is available to everybody, that has the security models that are there, the single sign-on, to make sure that people are allowed to get access to it, and much, much more. And as Carl mentioned, this is not a phone here, but on a phone, there you get access to the GPS, to the camera, and with that, we can use the GPS to, as we walk around, it can switch to screens automatically. We can, if we're entering information in, it can tag the GPS location along with what the data they entered in. Scanning barcodes, you can have barcodes on equipment, which you could scan it, bring up the screen, or bring up the documentation on that. The accelerometer information there. We actually have a demo of the accelerometer back at our booth with a fun little child's claw game. It's a lot of possibility that is there with that. So to give you a sense of how all of this is built, I'm going to go in the designer and show you from scratch how we can make an application like this. So I'm going to minimize this and go into the designer. So for the sake of this, I already have a connection to a PLC, a connection to a database, and I already have some tags created so that we can focus on Perspective in particular. So I'm going to create a new view. Perspective, that's what we are creating. I'm going to create a home screen. I'm going to mount it to the root URL. So we're dealing with URL since we're in a browser. And we can pass parameters with the URLs, all of that. So with this, I'm just going to create a simple little screen. Let's take this ramp tag. Let's drag it over here. As you guys were seeing, I'll create a cylindrical tank. We can take this ramp over here as LED display, take another one. I can start rapidly building out my application. Here we also have simple factory graphics. You can import any SVG, PNG, JPEG, GIF. You can bring those on screens. You can stylize those, of course. We can do control, take components here for a toggle button, or if I take one for HOA or multi-state button, we can really rapidly create these screens. And I'll do one more here. We'll create a gauge. And so right now I've got this screen built out. It's live. It's bringing information from the PLC. We got control in there as well. I'm going to go ahead and save this. I want to see this at my application I built now in the browser. So we're going to go up here, Tools, and we're going to launch Perspective, which is simply going to open my browser. It's going to point me to a URL, which would be the IP address of the server. So hold on there. Of course, this is what happens. Oh, there we go. Which is the IP address of the server, and then the URL to get to that project. And so I've only got one screen here. It's pretty simple. And I do have control. I can turn things on and off. We're good to go. Now, one of the major parts of Perspective is the deployment, is how fast we can make changes and have that deployed to everybody who's looking at the application. So if I go back to that home screen and I want to add something new, let's say that I'm going to put on here a table component. If I can find it, of course. That's what happens. So I'll put a table on there, and I'm going to link it to some historical data. So I'll bring some tag history in here, and I'll bring its process temp variable in. And we'll make sure we bring that back as a document. OK, so I've got some historical data now in a table. OK, so now I'm going to save this. So I'm going to bring it over here to the right. I'm going to save this. And as soon as I save it, we're going to push that out to all the people that are looking at the data. So let's go ahead and do that. Save it. Can update. And immediately, that table is available in that display. So it makes it very, very easy to work with. Now, again, we were dealing with URLs. So I only have one page right now. Let's create another page. So we have two things to go to. So I'm going to go over here, add another one, another view, call it history. And I'm going to mount that at /history. And we're going to bring on this one a XY chart. And I'll make it full size of the display here. And we'll make that screen scale. OK, so I'm going to do the same thing real quick. I'm going to bind that to the same historical data that we had before. And now I've got history. And we're going to go ahead and save this. So I've got a new view that's at /history. So literally, I can go up here in my browser and type in /history, get to that particular page, and I can see that chart that we just made. Of course, I can interact with it, do all the stuff that we're showing earlier. But I want to be able to navigate between those two pages. I want to have a menu that goes between it. So we can do that as well. Let's create a new view. We're going to call this menu. And we're going to bring it up on the left-hand side here. So I'll make it a little bit smaller, 200 pixels wide. We have a built-in, lot of powerful components. There's a built-in menu tree component. And in that, we can create sub-menu items. We can go down deep. I'm just going to create two sub-menu items here. One at the root for my home. And that will be, call it home. And I'll put an icon in there. And then we'll have one at that new history screen that I just created. And I'll call that history. And now we've got these two pages. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to bring this menu up on the left-hand side. I want to show it. I want to dock it to the left, kind of like the demo project that I showed. So I'm going to bring it there, make it 200 pixels wide, and have it always visible. Go ahead and save it. Again, coming back to my demo project, you can now see the menu over here that I can go between home and history. Real easy to navigate. You're in control of the application environment. You're in control of how everything works with this system. And with that, there's a whole lot of options with these menus, these docks that we've got. And so if I didn't want it visible all the time, I can make it on demand. And I can actually show a handle icon. So if I go back now, instead of it being always visible, it now can bring out when I want to bring it out and go between these different pages. Now, last thing is you kind of always want to make it look nice. You want to put a header up there at the top, put a logo in there, and kind of make this thing look nice. So let me do my 80 pixels here, and I'm going to set the background color of this. So we're talking about live development. So come with me here. Get that in there. And I'm going to take a Ignition SVG, put that there. OK, so now I've got a menu. And at the top, I'm going to show it at the header up here. Again, we'll do 80 pixels, save it. And now I've got a complete application with navigation, with a header, and the ability for me to do control, read, and write. And I did all that in really less than 10 minutes. So once we connect Ignition to all the sources of data, PLCs, history, databases, web services, MQTT, any of those systems, we can build out entire systems very rapidly, take advantage of all the tools that are there. And if I wanted to, I can now bring out my phone, use the Perspective app to get to the same application we built, but then to utilize all of those those phone sensors that we have. So it gives you a really powerful framework to not just visualize data, but to create real applications that are just rendered with any browser. I mean, now I can go home and bring this up on my refrigerator if I wanted to. It's pretty exciting. Yes, I have. So with that, I will conclude the demo. And back over to Don.
Thanks, guys. Let's at least clap for Travis. Thanks, Travis, and thanks, Carl. Anyway, we're kind of excited, okay? We get pretty excited at Inductive about certain things, and we're really happy to. Yesterday, we've had a beta in for, since October. I think we got over 1,000 companies in the beta participating, and we went public beta yesterday at the press conference. So it's in public beta right now. The usual question people ask before I let you ask other questions is, when's it going to be here? It is February right now. In April, you will have it in your hands, and it will be rolling. So it's here. It's now, and it's happening. Anyone can use it. Incidentally, you might want to kind of take a look at it. So check out Perspective. You can go. You can download it. You can play around with it on your phone. Play around with the app. See how the cameras and touch features and stuff work that you saw a little bit here now. Or you can visit demo.inductiveautomation.com to experience it in any browser yourself. So that lets you put it in your hands and see how you might do a project with it. So we tried to leave a few minutes. We did leave ourselves 5 minutes for questions. So Travis and Carl are here. Jim told me to stay here. Don't walk. So with that, questions from anybody? Yes, in the very back, of course, yes. You have to speak up and I'll repeat it if it's not too complex.
I was just wondering, so it's data acquisition, right?
Yes.
But what about live process control?
So it's data acquisition. What about live process control?
So,
Are all the mics on?
so when it comes to Ignition, certainly we can read and write to any of the tags we have, any of the PLCs. So if you're looking at HMI screens, we can do control. But if you're talking about actual process control behind the scenes, we do have parts of the software like sequential function charts. We can build really complex engines that can especially involve business processes like ERP. Get the information from there, get operators' input to actually then do control with the equipment, to do interlocks, all that fun stuff. So we have a lot of facilities for those engines within Ignition, and fundamentally everything's read-write.
Thanks. Thank you. Next question. Yes, Jim.
Just two quick ones. Can you build the interface that you just did on your smartphone as well as use it on a smartphone? And can you also, if you had a tablet PC, would that come down on the side of displaying a tablet, or would it be the cards?
Good questions.
Yeah, so the application that I built just now, that would certainly work on a phone or a tablet.
I don't think that was his question.
Build it.
Your question is,
Could you build it on a phone?
yeah, is the design experience itself mobile?
Right.
No. No, the designer itself is still very much a desktop application.
Just curious.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned that,
Right.
display.
So that's really up to the application designer for each project. You can make that, so we could spend an hour talking about all the various strategies we have to build responsive UIs, because there's a bunch of different strategies, and you can fine tune them based on portrait orientation, pixel widths, and so you can mix and match all those different strategies.
Next question. Yes, Alan.
You guys consider doing like a cross-collective?
Oh, you're so self-promoting. I love it. Alan Ray from Air Energy is here. And I do want to mention that on Thursday in this room, right? On Thursday in this room, he and a number of folks from industry of our customer base have started the Ignition Cross-Industry Collective. And anybody who's interested is invited. Low camera, Paul, we have a bunch of people here from different organizations very active in it. So please join us. I think it's 1 to 5, I believe it is, right after the lunch ends of ARC on Thursday. You're invited. So yeah, we thought about that, Alan, decided to do it this week. So, and Alan will be speaking, and there's some really great information from our customer base. Yes, next question.
I have a question on 8. Is there
No, not in 8. That is coming, though. That's one of our next big things that we're going to be working on.
Yeah. Great. Next question. We got time for a couple more. Yes, please.
I actually don't know if this is going to apply for this, or maybe we have to meet afterwards. I am a user. We are from the city of Orlando. We use right now Ignition 7.9. And I want to know about migration, if you guys are going to provide any type of anything about doing migration from 7 to 8. Also training, because, you know, is there a way that you're going to continue with the inductive university?
Inductive University?
For this, because I see a lot of changes that may not be intuitive even when you already use 7.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, I want to know that, so I don't know if you have.
Those two areas are one of the reasons it's coming out in April, too. So you want to comment on both the training and
good
the
questions.
migration?
So as far as migration, there's a few things to consider. So first of all, you can upgrade Ignition 7 to Ignition 8. Everything that was in Ignition 7 is totally backwards compatible and will upgrade into 8. But what I really think you're probably asking is that you have vision applications. Okay, so Ignition, the vision module, for anyone who's not an Ignition user, you know, this is the perspective module is new. It's a new application design framework for the web. We already have an application design framework for desktop applications called the vision module. The vision module is not going away. So the vision module also exists in Ignition 8. So your vision applications will continue to be vision applications in 8. You can then add the perspective module if you want to make mobile-focused applications in addition to those. Does that make sense? But your vision applications don't turn into perspective applications. So that's the way that works. As far as training and the university goes, yeah, we have a big challenge ahead of us. We're basically rebuilding the whole university so that it includes everything about 8. And so that'll happen as sort of a rolling, rollout. And certainly we're going to have courses, I believe, on sort of like, are you already a vision user? Here's a quick course, intro to perspective kind of thing, because there's a lot of similar concepts. So we'll have all that kind of training material. We're not going to have the entire university redone at the moment 8 releases. I think that's unrealistic, but it'll be coming shortly thereafter.
Are you going to expect people that use 7 until when you're going to be supporting 7? And at what point do we actually have to start switching to 8 to continue receiving support? I don't
Right.
know, imagine at some point you're going to say no more 7.
Oh, that'll be a long time from now. Yeah, I mean 7.9 is an LTS version, which means
21,
that
isn't it? Is it 21 or 22?
I think it's 22. I should
22?
have had that number.
21 or 22, it's supported until right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got 3 or 4 years left on the LTS of 7.9. So and even then, we never really force upgrades. I mean, we've still got people running factory PMI. Probably not. Hopefully not.
Okay, so listen, it is now 20 after, and we wanted to end because the keynote starts real quickly. Thanks for your attention. Please feel free to join us. We've got a booth
come
there.
see us
We're
at the
happy to
booth.
answer questions, give demos, everything. So thanks for attending. Have a great day.
Thank you.